All right, it's final word. It's me and him. We are going to be together in, 10 days, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Something like that. Something like that in Edinburgh when we are running for the Lord's Taverners, the half marathon in my case, the 10K in your case, 50 final word runners we got up to in the end, which I'm so proud of, trying to raise 30,000 quid for the Lord's Taverners. And they're amazing programs in their 75th birthday. 28,000 young people last year benefited from working with the Taverners in their cricket programs, for the vast bulk of those making cricket a reality when it otherwise wouldn't be to play it. So I've seen firsthand these programs. These are inspirational, to say the least. So I always feel like that when preparing for these events, knowing that what we're doing here is actually making a contribution to bettering the lives of people who in oftentimes are in difficult circumstances, disability and disadvantage. 30,000 is our target, Jeff, and this is the time. And you've been putting in the work. I'm to your immense credit. You're not just rocking up, and you've joked about like being in a sidecar or whatever. I mean,
motorized esky was my original pitch.
But you are actually doing, and as is my wife.
Yeah.
Right? She ran 11K the other day. She probably should be doing a half marathon. She's been out every day. She's never run in her life, but she's now tapped into the Lord's Tab thing. She really wants to be part of this, and you are as well. Tell us what you've been up to.
Yeah, I've been doing. I hate running. I've said this on the show before, and I will say it again. It is a physically awful activity, but I knew I had to prepare to do it, and I'm very, very much not suited to it. So I've been at least doing a 5Ks every 2 to 3 days, and I'm going to do my first 10 for a while. I have run 10 before, but not much. So I'm going to aim for one of those. I'm going to find a relatively flat piece of land down by the river probably and see if I can at least get a 10 under my belt, so that I've got the confidence so that I know that I've done it. I know it'll be hillier in Edinburgh, but look, it'll be fine. We'll get through it one way. I'll do it walking if I have to. If I have to walk the last 3Ks, so be it.
You won't. The adrenaline. Everyone will be lining the course. We'll be up around Arthur's Seat cheering you on. You'll do it. You'll do a terrific job. I'm ready now. I'm tapering. Mm-hmm. I did my longest run that I needed to do last week. I've got a time in mind, which is a fair bit quicker than the time I originally said, because I've been going okay. So we will see. It's been fun to actually prep for this one, because I've been doing it, without having these that were buckling, which was the case the last 2 years. So feel a bit fitter, which is fun. But yeah, we're all there for the tabs, 50 people. Well, I guess what I really want to say at this point.
The point is this, that it's squeeze time, and there are many, many, many worthy causes that you could donate your time and attention and money to, and we support that as well. If you have other things that you need to do with those resources, then all power to you. If you do have the ability to throw in here, this is something that matters to us, because we love cricket. We love the inclusiveness of cricket. We love the opportunity to get everybody involved in the game, and that's what the Tabs are doing, to say that disability, disadvantage shouldn't keep young people out of the game, and they should be able to find a way for people to play cricket, even if a physical disability means that it's difficult to play conventional cricket. There are other types of cricket that they can get involved with. So that's why it's special to us. And look, we're raising 30 grand. We're at about 5. We know that these things always happen in the last couple of weeks, and often in the last couple of days. So we need some momentum. We'd like to not leave it all to the end. We'd like to try to keep that coffer building, keep a sense of, there has been great momentum actually. I watched the donations come in real time, and they have been building up a lot even in the last 2 or 3 days. So thank you to everybody who's chipped in, and if it's £5, if it's 20, if it's 100, whatever it is that you're able to do, it's all welcome, and it all contributes towards that goal.
And it's very easy. It's the other thing I'd say. You click the link. It's like everything these days is Apple Pay, isn't it? Whatever the your phone. You don't have to put your you don't have to put your life story into the to get. It's very straightforward. This is like a 1-minute process, if that. So click the link in the show notes if you want to contribute to what we're doing for the Tabs. And to stick with that theme, a reminder: 18th of August is our big day at Wormsley. Book the day off work.
Yes.
Come and watch us run around and play against Zero Ducks. We're trying to raise. Well, we will be raising money for the Taverners that day as well, having been kindly gifted Wormsley for mates rates, perhaps the most beautiful ground in England. I'm playing at another one. I'm playing at Arundel tomorrow in the Authors versus Actors annual game. That's the other, air quotes, most beautiful ground in England. But Wormsley will be very special on the 18th of August. It's a Monday. A lot of final word people will be there. 20 quid to come and watch, 90 quid to sit in the marquee, which is a steal. And that's a Taverners event as well. The link for that, as ever, is in the show notes as well.
There we go. Get involved. Lots of good fun that comes with doing good things across the summer. Hasn't been good fun in the subcontinent over the last week or so. Over the last few weeks, the build-up of tensions, the people who've lost their lives, the plane strikes, the missile strikes, the angst, the feeling that things might be about to spill over into a much more widespread military conflict. Thankfully, India and Pakistan have agreed to a ceasefire for the time being, so it doesn't mean that the problem is solved, but at least the temperature has come down a bit with, hopefully both countries realising that they don't have that much to gain from trying to prosecute this kind of conflict. The context, the implications that we look at is the effect that it's had on cricket, which has been extraordinary with the IPL cancelled, the Pakistan Super League cancelled, and then, initially they said postponed, then it was cancelled and it looked like it'd be months before they got back on. Then the ceasefire happened. Now we've got a resumption all within a week or so. And so all of these overseas players and coaches and so on who were sent home are being called back or not called back, depending on the case. The Indian players and coaches who were told to disperse to their homes are being summoned to resume the IPL immediately. And then the PSL, that's a little bit foggier because initially they were going to try to play it in the UAE and then that got kiboshed probably by the BCCI. It's a complicated situation.
Yeah, so, as it turns out, the reporting from this morning is that both tournaments will resume on the 17th and both will remain in the countries where they were played anyway. In the south of India for the IPL, and I'm not sure where in Pakistan. That's not been announced. There was a very punchy tweet from Mohsin Naqvi, the very punchy chair of the PCB, who seems to make a lot of headlines. 6 teams, 0 fear. Get ready for 8 thrilling matches starting 17th May. So that's clear, and the IPL have put their schedule out, which will drag it out to the 3rd of June. Talk about cricket implications. That's 8 days before the World Test Championship final. So a little bit like 2023 where there'll be that crunch, but for different reasons here. And inevitably you end up thinking about like selection and where does Josh Hazlewood fit into all of this? He missed the last RCB game with a niggle, but they're towards the top of the table. Might he be required? If they were to try and withdraw from the latter stages of the IPL, it might mean they're suspended for future seasons. We know that from the new conditions that were brought in earlier this year. So, and it's not just Hazlewood, by the way. Cummins, Stark, Rabada, Marco Jansen, Travis Head, Josh Inglis. They're all in these squads. We don't know the South African squad yet, but you can safely anticipate there'll be 3 or 4 IPL cricketers who'll feature in their 15. So that's the scheduling bit. But yeah, like when this went down on Friday, it did feel like the implications could be vast. Like imagine a world where the IPL couldn't be completed in India, and what in the short term the knock-on effect, moving it to the September window they were referring to. We've seen it played occasionally in October around pandemic times. We have seen disruptions to the IPL in the past. That's not without precedent, but still. What that means in this world where the IPL and the influence of the IPL is only getting bigger as it relates to the decisions players make, the commercial realities for different boards around the world who all turn their eyes to India at this time of year. So there'll be a lot of relieved administrators, to say the least, even if that feeling isn't necessarily replicated from some players who now will be put in a pretty tough spot. You'd think there'd be some who would be at home. I know a lot are in Dubai, but some would be home. And where do they land on immediately jumping on a plane and going back into a place that up until a week ago felt like it could be turning into something of a war zone, pending where you were in different parts of those two countries?
They're slightly different situations. So the PSL only had 4 regular season games left and then 4 finals that were due to come. So as a player who's looking at skipping out on that, you're not missing so much of this season. The IPL had 12 regular season games, more teams, obviously. So each team only had a few games, 3 games left, I think, for most of the teams, and then finals. So I think to some extent it depends where you are. If you're Sunrisers Hyderabad, where Cummins and Travis Head are playing, they were already out of finals. So it doesn't really matter if those players come back or not. But if you're a team who's pushing for a final spot who's looking for a tournament win, then you would want those players. I think in this situation, I doubt anyone's going to be being subject to that blacklist power, which the IPL have pulled this out over the last couple of years, that if players go in for the auction, get picked and then withdraw, a la Harry Brook, then they can be banned for a couple of seasons. I think in a situation like this, given so much of the season has already been played, that's probably not going to happen.
You'd think so, but there might be, who knows, the overarching influence. There was that piece out of, I think it was Cricinfo broke the story originally, about how the Emirati Cricket Board, who were, there was strong reporting that the PSL was going straight to the UAE, and that PSL had got in first. India didn't therefore have that option with the IPL. But there's reports there that the Emirati Cricket Board are like, no, we're not going to do that because we feel too much loyalty to Jay Shah and the BCCI. Remembering,
because we feel too much fear about the possible consequences. Because
no, but the way it was framed, there was a source who was quoted in the story saying personal loyalty to Jay Shah. Now, the irony, of course, being that Jay Shah's got nothing to do with the BCCI anymore. He runs the ICC. But, anyway, put that to one side. So even they felt like, I want to say pick a side, but there's that overarching. The ECB coming to the assistance of the IPL too, saying that they were willing to host the remainder of the IPL. Now, it didn't really feel like that was genuinely cheeky on the cards, but still, you didn't see them putting out a media statement saying they were going to host the balance of the PSL, did you? And nor would you expect them to. There are layers of power here. What the best type of power is when it's implied to such an extent you don't need to exert it, right? And that's
the thing. And there's you mentioned the word loyalty. There's a very grey slide from being loyal to somebody or being afraid of somebody, and those two things are not unrelated. And the fact that Jay Shah's running the ICC and that so many ICC tournaments are held in the UAE, so they are to the benefit of the Emirati Cricket Board. All of that could be pulled, for instance. ICC tournaments might just decide that they're going to be played in Namibia and Zimbabwe from now on. So those possibilities existed, and any time that there's a power flex between those two boards, the Indian board and the Pakistan board, who's going to come out on top.
And there's a knock-on to a bilateral series, not that it's that high profile, but Pakistan are hosting Bangladesh straight after the PSL. And that'll now get pushed back. And so, again, it's not been as I thought. I don't know what you thought, but my expectation was that a suspension is normally the precursor to a cancellation or a longer suspension. Like, okay, well, we'll just cut to the car chase. This is too difficult. We'll punt it down the road to September, October, and it'll play out accordingly. But the ceasefire changed the conversation entirely. And the nature of that being quite sudden, and Trump being involved in that, and seemingly announcing that himself before the two countries themselves made statements to that effect. Because that happened abruptly and unexpectedly, it meant that the PSL and the IPL were able to just keep things on track. But as I said before, it may, it will feed into what would have been the ideal prep for the World Test Championship final. And I suppose that's the concession that international cricket is increasingly having to make to account for a longer IPL season, albeit in this case, one that was unexpectedly longer.
Well, I would say that there are a couple of sides to a coin here. One, most players are relatively accustomed to the IPL being erratic. It has had disrupted seasons plenty of times before. You've got was it 2009 when they moved the whole thing to South Africa because of the election. You had another election move in 2014 when they moved it to the UAE for the first time. You had the first COVID season when the whole IPL was delayed and then subsequently moved to later in the year in the Emirates. And then you had the next year when the season was split, when it again got called off halfway through the season and got reconvened in the UAE. So this is the least disrupted one. But I think players are within their rights to say, well, we signed on until the 25th of May and we cannot sign on for another week if we've got another engagement. And at least for now, the home boards still have enough power to flex and say, we're not going to extend the NOC.
Can you imagine a world where CA step in and stand up to the IPL, though? Can you imagine a world
where in this situation, yeah. I think with this last minute change, I think they'd be within their rights.
No, I'm not saying not within their rights. Don't get me wrong. They're well within their rights, but I doubt they will. I doubt that. I doubt that. I mean, and especially, not especially, given the way that Travis Head was able to rock up at the World Test Championship final off no cricket in 23, and others did as well. I think was
it worked out for
Green.
him.
Did work out pretty well. I think Cameron Green was the other who came straight from an IPL final, possibly.
Yeah.
And a few days later, and that was a tournament that was very COVID-y as well, wasn't it? No, it wasn't. Sorry, that was the wrong one. 23. It was 21 where it was quite COVID-y, and they had to think about schedules around the championship final. Anyway, that's all happening. And because they're back on, so we won't have an IPL wrap as such this week with Ben Jones. We'll defer that to next week when there's a bit more cricket to discuss in our Whamageddon.
But we are talking Emirati cricket, which means we should detour through another little piece of Emirati cricket before we get back to the World Test Championship final. The UAE women's team, 10 players retired out in a T20 international. My word, this was good fun. People, I liked how there was a sort of progression of response to this story of people being very surprised, then very angry for some reason. Some people getting stroppy about this being an unreasonable thing to do, and then or being suspicious or something, and then having the whole thing explained to them. So, in short, they're playing Qatar, who they outmatch very much in the Asia regional qualifiers. They're absolutely belting them. Their opening partnership has put on, 170 odd in no time at all. And there's a thunderstorm coming. And they're worried about getting a game in because you've got to bowl 5 overs in the second innings to get a Duckworth-Lewis calculation. So the Emirates team look at this situation and they say, you know what, we've got enough runs. We know we've got enough runs. We're very confident that we will be able to squash them. But if we bat through to the end of our innings and use up those last few overs and then don't get the 5 overs in that we need to bowl, we're not going to get a win. They're going to get away with it. So they spoke to the umpires. You can't declare in white ball cricket, and then had the brainwave from the coach that, well, you can retire. So if everybody retires, get everyone to put the pads on and then get them all to retire, we're done.
There is just so much here. It's such us to be talking about it, really. First of all, I didn't know you couldn't declare in a T20. How did I not know that?
In any limited overs game, you can't declare.
I just assumed you could.
No.
I just assumed that you'd be within your rights in this scenario to do. I never thought about it, but I'm like, that's quirky that you can't declare. It's a pretty bloody strong UAE team, by the way. I just want to add that Isha Oza, who's their captain's an absolute gun. She made 113, retired out as they all were. And then Titra Satir, she's the prodigy. I think she might be 17 now. She's the one who was playing in the national team at 12 and looks like she could be anything. Will eventually be on the circuit. They've got Kavisha Kumari playing for them as well, who is another. She's like maybe 21 now. Another gun who. And the reason I cite all of that is that these World Cup qualifying games for the UAE, they're not Mickey Mouse. These are real. They're ranked 16th in the world, and they would back themselves to make a T20 World Cup soon. And because these are groups of 3, they couldn't run the gauntlet on drawing and having a no result against Qatar, the worst team in the group. If they drop the other game, they're out. So I respect this immensely. They needed to do this. So it's worked out perfectly for them. It's worth remembering they did risol Qatar for 29 here. They didn't actually need the DLS. They bowled them out in 11.1 overs. And to add to that, the magnificently named Razifa Banu Emmanuel made 20 of the 29. She fucking Bannermaned. The Qatari opener had a 68%er and had a Bannerman.
Because they were all out.
In the failed chase. 20 out of 29 all out from 29 deliveries. The batter who faced the first ball, Rizva Banu Emmanuel. So the rarely spotted Bannerman, which
the T20 Bannerman, which is almost impossible to achieve because 10 wickets need to fall in 20 overs.
That's what
while
I mean.
You make the runs.
The lesser spotted to follow 10 retired outs one after another. So brilliant stuff. And I just want to say, like, what's nearly lost in this story is that UAE will make a World Cup soon, and they will be part of the story is the investment in Emirati cricket. So the women's team have a significant amount of investment in it because they can. We've seen the men's UAE team make World Cups as well, but the view taken, as it is with a lot of cricket boards, is the women are more likely to leapfrog into a point where they might be quite competitive at World Cups. So a lot of them are on full contracts, round the year contracts, and they're a puncher's chance of making the next T20 World Cup. So that's the underlying context in all of this. Under the captaincy of Isha Oza, who's a gun, anything is possible. So there's the novelty of all of this, but there's the secondary story, which is the more important long-term one.
And in terms of playing conditions, match regs, not being able to declare in limited overs cricket, I imagine they had that in place in order for probity reasons, in order to make sure that you couldn't be accused of dodgy declarations that were that gave the other team too much of a chance, that sort of thing. But if you can retire out a whole team, then you can effectively declare it. But it punches everyone's stats. So, you've made 100. Making an unbeaten 100 is how you bump your averages up and make your stats page look better. So those players have been denied that, and everyone else has effectively made a duck. They've all got a naught recorded on their record because they're retired out. They haven't got to bat.
Yeah.
So given that you can effectively declare, maybe you should just allow declarations rather than kicking everybody's stats page.
No, it's good. Oh, by the way, I neglected to mention the Mahiga Gower could return to the UAE one day. Who knows? She could go for Ed Joyce. So she's gone to England to play for them now. But there's a world where if they do start making World Cups, that she could go back to her country of birth. Another UAE
and England do have
12.
They have a history of fucking around their international recruits and not actually getting a full career's worth out of them.
World Test Championship squads are in, well, at least one of them. I thought South Africa's was coming in today. I'm kind of pissed off that we don't have it to talk about as well. But Australia's is in. They put out a press release when we were sleeping. The squad of 15 is exactly as you would have expected it. There are zero surprises here. So this goes for
the only surprise is they have a reserve spinner in the squad.
Well, if Lyon steps on a cricket ball. So they've got Kuhnemann as the reserve spinner, which is standard. And they've got Inglis as the reserve bat / reserve keeper. And then they've got a 7-6 problem that we'll come to in a moment with the bats, and they've got a 4-3 with the quicks, which is fairly standard with this Aussie team. So the Windies tour that follows 3 test matches: Barbados, Grenada, Jamaica. But so this covers all 4 test matches.
Oh right, yeah.
So Sam Constas is in the squad now via Dan Brettig's reporting. 4 or 5 days before the squad came out. This was expected, but it's also expected that Marnus Labuschagne will open. So they'll find a way to shuffle Labuschagne up, as we speculated 2 or 3 weeks ago on the podcast, Jeff, which would mean they have room to do everything they would like to do with Cameron Green as a specialist bat and maybe Bo Webster as the all-rounder. It's creative. It won't be universally. 3? It won't be universally supported.
Green bat 3.
Well, Green or Smith, Green or Smith at bat 3 in that world, and you'd have
surely they're not moving Smith. They've got the Smith at 4 thing has finally bloomed.
That's true. That's true.
Going back to 4, you don't want to mess with that.
Well,
so it has to be Green at 3.
Green at 3, and look, Green at 4 did nothing wrong before he got injured. But Green did make the 100 in his first game for Gloss. His next 4 scores are 3, 4, 2, and 8. So he's not blowing the joint up. He's got one more game this week, I'm pretty sure. Green. And by the way, Norris Webster, he made 80 odd, beautiful 80 odd in his first game for Warwickshire, but missed out in his most recent game and hasn't really been effective with the ball either, which is a little bit unexpected given
bagged a couple, but yeah,
he's not ran through a team yet with the ball, and I sort of thought that he might, and that would be enough to tip him over. He's got another couple of games with Warwickshire as well before they break off into the T20 stuff and the Australian squad get together. So the squad is almost exactly as you would think. Brendan Doggett is the spare travelling reserve as the 16th. And then we come into the classic conversation, Jeff. Cummins, Hazelwood, Stark, Boland. Who's going to miss? It can't be Cummins. It can't be Stark. It can't be Hazelwood. And it can't be Boland. It can't be any of them.
They've all got to go to India.
I always find it funny how people give really strong opinions on this. Anyway, there is no right answer. This is
people go clearly.
It's got to be Scotty.
Hazelwood's fucking finished, mate. He can't get on the park. Clearly he's no good. And you're like, he took his wickets at 13 last year.
Yeah, he was Australia's best seamer in the summer before he got injured again. And there is a conversation about his body, unquestionably. But who would doubt that Josh Hazelwood has a claim to be in Australia's best 3 quicks? You're kidding yourself if it's it's an open and shut just because Boland's a good cricketer. That doesn't discount Hazelwood being a brilliant bowler as well. It'll be a decision they will, I expect, leave very late.
Yes.
There is no upside. There is zero upside in picking the team until the day before. They will base it on touch and eye and how the bodies are pulling up through training and all of that. The fact that Hazelwood until very recently was having a sensational IPL, then he missed 1 game with a shoulder, and it got reported like it could put him in doubt for the WTC final, and it was purely precautionary. And I get that with him because of his history with injury in the last few seasons. He's playing at the moment. Boland isn't playing at the moment. The extent to which that might feed into it, I don't know. But nor should we know. This is a one for their future selves, and there is no bad outcome.
I would love to see Scott Boland get the opportunity to play because I love watching him. I love his story. I love the way that he does it. The 10 for against India at the SCG was a deeply satisfying thing to see. I also understand that Josh Hazlewood, like I said, took 35 wickets at 13 in the last calendar year that he played.
Generational great. Yeah.
And maybe a factor, and maybe there should be a factor, is that Hazlewood has played 3 tests at Lords before, and Boland has probably never played at Lords in any sort. Would he have played a first-class game there? Because he played so little. He came over for that Durham season, but then he barely got a game before he got injured, didn't he?
Yeah, and they were in Division 1 and Middlesex were in Division 2.
Yeah.
So
he may never have
23, in the 23 Ashes test, Hazlewood returned for Lords, having missed the first test when Boland played the first test. And I'm just spooling through in my mind whether he would have played there in 2018 in the Indigenous tour that came over. But yeah, when you're talking about top flight cricket, it's improbable he's played there. Unless I'm missing something obvious, and I might be, who knows? You put me on the spot. But yeah, but Hazlewood, he's had success at Lords, bowled beautifully there in 15 and 19.
I've managed to pull this up. No, he's never played a first-class game at Lords. I've got his ground. I'm looking at his career ground by ground.
But we can say that we know Hazlewood's got form there, right? He bowled the house down on day one there in 2019. He was match winning on the final day at Lords in 2023. He was the one that got Stokes after all when times were tough. And he played a substantial role there in 2015. The best he bowled in the 15 Ashes was when he and Stark and Johnson worked England over in the second Test match. So body of work, sure. I almost feel like it's redundant. You and I banging on about this because there's no answer. What I'm more interested in is this Constas Labuschagne, because it comes back to what you and I said a few months ago. They should have found a way to get Constas out here. That was a misstep. His stocks were so high after Melbourne and Sydney, especially after Melbourne.
And there was a window. You would have had an answer. Like you would have, if he'd gone badly, you would have had a reason to go, well, let's leave him out for this one. And if he'd gone well, you would have been able to see whether he could hack it in England.
Well, there was just an opportunity. And I'm not saying that no work was done here. I know they had a crack. I think our Middlesex conversation led towards them at least asking politely whether that was viable. But by that point, they'd signed Dane Patterson. But there would have been a county, 18 counties. One of them would have had Sam Constas play for them across the last 6 weeks. And CA could have picked up the bill. We could have picked up the bill. It's minimum wage is enough to get a player over here. Some players play for minimum wage because it's more about getting with the clubs that have got less money, because it's more about playing than it is about making a lot of money over here for internationals from time to time. So had he had that body of work, it might have helped. Marnus has played a lot of county cricket. Didn't play on the weekend. He's over here now, birth of his second kid. He's over here now. He must have just had a weekend getting settled in. He's playing this week for Glamorgan. So he'll have a couple of games.
Is he opening this week?
That's a great question. Glamorgan did make like 900 on the weekend, not that many, but so it's a tough. It might be a tough team to get into. We'll talk more about county cricket later, but I feel like that is the team that they will go with. I feel like they'll feel more relaxed with an experienced campaigner, 2 Ashes series in Labuschagne.
One-off test, Lords,
with that
occasion, slope, that. Untried in the conditions. I think it'd be a big ask, and obviously it was a big ask to send Constas out on Boxing Day, but they had nothing to lose at that point. They didn't have a functioning second opener at that point, so it was really a free hit for Constas. It didn't matter. He could have failed twice and Australia wouldn't have been any worse off than they had been otherwise. In this kind of situation, you do hedge your bets, I think. But the number 3 bit is the interesting thing. For me, Inglis should be batting 3, not Green, particularly because Green hasn't played a lot of cricket lately. Yeah, had a good innings and then has missed out a few times. But either way, he's a player who seems to take so long to warm into his work, whereas Inglis is a player who adapts immediately. And, again, big ask going bat first drop in the test team, which isn't a position you play. But I would have more faith that he would be able to find a way to do something, even if it was make 40 or 50 rather than making 100, that he'd be he'd be the player for me who's, I think his case should be considered irresistible rather than being considered the spare bat.
Yeah, I agree, actually. I would do the same thing. I reckon Inglis is Australia's next Test captain. So I think that it's not. I don't feel like that's too much of an ask for him to adapt and bat three, acknowledging that it's improper. If Smith did it, it makes it a bit easier. But Smith's clearly wanting to bat four for the rest of his career, and he's been in such rude form of late. I just can't see a world where they don't go ahead with him batting at four, which does make the spot three ever important in Australian cricket historically, the one that is up for grabs. Look, Green might make an irresistible case and make runs again this week. Who's to know? And they like Green for obvious reasons. He stepped up when batting at four in New Zealand. So again, it's not
long term, yes, but for this game, for this particular situation, Inglis is the bet for me.
A couple of bits and pieces before we go to our next break, Jeff. South Africa have named Shukri Conrad as their all formats coach. So he's moved on from having the test team. He's now got the white ball team. Some fairly strong comments in the press conference, which I note here, about putting out the best Proteas side every time they play. Quote, the Proteas will never be a franchise team. The Proteas will never be a league, nor will it be of convenience. This is a part of building a culture and building an environment where players want to be part of. So he's putting it back on the players straight away. He's stepping in and saying, if you want to be a Protea, you play for us. If you want to be a franchise player, fuck off. And maybe that's what needs to happen. I don't know. It's imperfect, but maybe there needs to be some leadership administratively from Cricket South Africa where they, of course, they want to find a balance and they can't be too strident with some of their players in denying them the ability to play franchise cricket. But where we've seen franchise cricket be prioritised over South African fare, the most obvious example when Rabada and Nortje missed Test cricket to play in the IPL, it feels like Conrad's going to be more bullish about all of this. And we'll see their World Test Championship squad, presumably, in the next day or two.
And we'll see whether players go back to the IPL to be playing there up until 5 or 6 days before that game, because they've got a warm-up match. They've got this Zimbabwe 4-day game that they're playing to acclimatise to England. Players in the IPL won't be playing that. That won't work out. So there's an acid test immediately on whether this is true.
I'll see how it's playing tomorrow. I didn't realise that I'm playing at the same ground where South Africa are playing Zimbabwe few weeks later. That will be nice.
I like Jeff, it. I like the bullishness though. This is okay. This is like, you've got to at least have high ambitions, and I think it gels with. So the interview you did with Kyle Abbott. What was really interesting there was him giving away Proteas cricket wasn't about not caring about it or wanting to go and get paid somewhere else. It was about being stuck behind a generational group of fast bowlers where it meant that he rarely got a game. So he was weighing up, do I want to carry drinks for most of the time that I spend with this squad versus being able to play regularly elsewhere. So you want players with that desire to actually be in that side.
Yeah, and just on that, this might be a timely moment to thank Kyle again for being such a awesome guest. We've been pretty lucky recently where people have been coming on the show like ready to rumble, not to brawl, but to ready to do what we kind of ask of them, which is to tell their story. And Kyle was awesome. He was grateful to do it, and that came through. And then he told his stories and he told them authentically and truthfully. And he's a great fella. He's a terrific fella. And his wife Cara got in touch as well as a final word listener to thank us for it too, which was nice. So thank you to both Abbotts for your support. And we'll talk more about Kyle's absurd performance on the weekend in our county wrap a little bit later on. Jeff, a story you've had your eye on for a while now is the sad story of Stuart MacGill, who we feel an affinity with. We've had him on the show before, and we've explained what happened with him. A bit more detail now around the judgment that came down. Well, not the judgment, rather the sentencing, which is not jail time. Ultimately, it's a community order.
Yeah, so it was pretty much as expected. I think you could read tea leaves from the setting up of the trial that there wasn't going to be much point served by seeking a custodial sentence. He was found guilty on a lesser charge of being involved with arranging a drug deal, basically, rather than being the person facilitating it himself. So it's a very hefty non-custodial sentence. So it's just under 500 hours. You tend to that's about as big as you get, I think, for non-custodial sentencing, and there'd be a degree of suspension there, which would mean that any sort of reoffending would see the sentencing revisited. But basically, the court ruled that he knew that he was setting up a deal, but he didn't know that it had actually taken place. So he was introducing people who wanted to make a deal happen. The judge, basically, you could read from the judgment that the public embarrassment, the fall from grace that he'd experienced, was considered to be a punishment in and of itself. Interesting that Steve Waugh was a character reference, wrote a letter to the court saying that he believed that Stuart MacGill has what it takes as a person to pull his life together and to be able to get things going on a better track from here on. So it's nice that his former captain, who, in that interview we did, Stuart MacGill still had such reverence for Steve Waugh. So that was heartening to see Steve expressing belief in him, and hopefully that's correct.
I didn't realise the timelines either. This all went down like within a few months of when we had him on the program. So.
Yeah, it's just afterwards.
Yeah,
probably 3 months later.
And there's a part of this too where I think I'm right in saying that the suspended bit is subject to like regular drug testing and that type of thing. So they're putting in guardrails that give him a chance to be where he needs to be. And I think the Steve Waugh character reference must have played a role in all of that. Jeff, we've got a county championship wrap to get to, the women's one-day domestic comp as well. We might go to that now. We'll be back in just a moment.